Global Mochilão, realizing just transitions. Welcome to the German Climate Pavilion at COP30 in Belém.
Good morning, everyone, here in Belém, and to those that are following our live stream. Thank you for joining our panel discussion on autocratization and green backlash, why democracy matters for effective climate action. My name is Michele Poletto. I work for the Climate Change and Democracy Program of International IDEA, an intergovernmental organization focused on promoting democracy worldwide. And I'm very pleased to be here co-hosting this event today with the German Pavilion at COP30. The idea today is to discuss about the multiple dimension of the nexus between climate change and democracy in a global context that becomes increasingly challenging. On the one hand, we notice that there is a growing disinvestment, at least in political terms, in climate action. And on the other hand, as an organization that observes democratic performance around the world, we have registered a decline in democratic performance in a majority of countries last year. This is a double challenge, and the two issues are profoundly related, as we believe that an effective climate action is only so if it is democratic. So today we want to look at these connections, but we also take advantage to present a new platform, the International Climate and Democracy Coalition, which is a space for knowledge exchange, cooperation, coordination, and joint action formed by different research institutions, international organizations, and civil society organizations active around the nexus between climate and democracy. To do so, I can count with the participation of very distinguished guests today. So we have Matías Bianchi, Head of Climate Policy Division at the Federal Ministry of Economic Cooperation and Development of Germany. Dylan Cava, Strategic Communication Lead of the Pacific Islands Climate Action Network, and Marcela Neri from Delibera Brazil. Laurence Toubiana, the CEO of the European Climate Foundation and Special Envoy of COP30 to the European Union, is also going to join us. She's busy in other meetings and negotiations, as you can imagine, but she will join us shortly. So let me start with Natasha. I would like to first thank you very much for the support of the German government for the work International IDEA does on climate and democracy. The German government has been a strategic partner since the very beginning of our work. How does a player as BMZ, the German cooperation, sees this double challenge for democracy and climate, and how do you react to it?
Yeah, thank you very much for this question, and welcome to you all to the German Pavilion in Belém. Belém is a symbolic place for both climate and democracy alike, because it is located at the gate to the Amazon, and these days it's also at the heart of the global conversation about our shared future. I also want to thank you, International IDEA, for convening this timely panel and for their leadership in connecting the dots between democratic governance and battling climate change. You are very right to frame it as a global do-it challenge, as you did in the question. We see, in effect, two global crises reinforcing each other: the accelerating climate emergency and the worrying trends of democratic backsliding and autocratization. Climate change is not only an ecological challenge for the planet, it is also a challenge, as we see, for systems of democratic governance. It tests the resilience, legitimacy and effectiveness of our political systems. And conversely, the current erosion of democratic norms undermines our collective ability to deliver climate action that is both ambitious and just. So we cannot treat these as separate issues. The climate crisis and the democracy crisis are two sides of the same coin. To safeguard democracy, we need effective climate policies. And to safeguard our climate, we need effective democratic governance. Democracies are not perfect, but they offer crucial advantages for effective climate action, such as, first, accountability. In our democratic systems, citizens can hold leaders responsible for long-term decisions, including those on emissions and adaptation. Second, transparency and participation. Open debate, free media, and civic participation create the legitimacy needed for transformative policies. And third, but not last, innovation and local ownership. Democratic governance enables bottom-up solutions, and these are vital for adaptation and resilience at the community level. Conversely, autocratic systems may be able to act quickly, but very often at the expense of inclusivity, justice, and long-term stability. They may also reject the importance of climate action entirely. Certainly, climate action without participation risks losing public trust, and with it, the social contract that sustains any transition. So we need to have difficult debates honestly and inclusively. We have to address both those actors who say we are not acting fast enough, but also those who are afraid of losing their livelihoods. So we cannot shut out either perspective, because if we do, climate policy loses its legitimacy. But we also have to recognize if we don't act, climate change itself puts democracy under pressure. Extreme weather and resource scarcity can fuel conflict, displacement, and political instability. Inequalities widened by climate impacts can erode trust in institutions. And when citizens experience repeated crises, they may turn toward populist or authoritarian promises of strong leadership. So we must strengthen democratic resilience as a condition for effective climate resilience. But what does this mean for our work as policymakers and partners? First, we believe that governance reform is a fundamental element of sound climate policy. Supporting transparent, inclusive institutions must be a part of every climate strategy. Only when we couple scientific expertise with concrete experiences of livelihood can we formulate good policies. This does not happen top-down. It takes the hard work of listening to the fears, hopes, and constructive ideas of all citizens. Second, we must promote participation and consensus building for a just green transition, involving citizens and civil society to strengthen trust in institutions and to overcome polarization. Third, climate finance must empower local actors, parliaments, municipalities, and civil society, not bypass them. Climate policy must deliver concrete, positive results for citizens. It must meet them where they are and trust in their ability to formulate good solutions that fit their lives. Fourth, international cooperation that should integrate democratic, participatory processes into climate partnerships, for example, through joint dialogue platforms, peer learning, and inclusive national adaptation plans. Germany's development cooperation is guided by this understanding. Democracy, human rights, and climate action are mutually reinforcing pillars of sustainable development. Therefore, we support inclusive climate policy development, and citizens' involvement in our partner countries. I believe it is a great opportunity today to exchange with key experts in exactly this field. Thank you for the question again.
Thank you, Natasha. Thank you for reminding us about those assets of democratic governance that are so important for effective climate action. And we are convinced that democracies are best placed to tackle these challenges, providing that we maximize those aspects that you mentioned: transparency, participation, accountability. And that calls for improving our institutions, reforming our institutions, and using these assets in the right direction. So I welcome Laurence Toubiana, who I invite to join us on the panel. Thank you very much for being with us today. So as I was mentioning before, Laurence is CEO of the European Climate Foundation and Special Envoy for COP30 to Europe. And she has been one of the architects of the Paris Agreement 10 years ago. So we are also very pleased to have you, and we are grateful for the support that the European Climate Foundation has given us, in particular for the constitution of this International Climate and Democracy Coalition established this year. Thank you very much for that. So before you joined us, we were discussing about the dual challenge between the dual challenge of the climate crisis and democratic decline in the world. And I would be very interested to hear from you, how do you perceive the changes in the international debate around climate in the last few years? Has something shifted? And what can we do as democratic actors to respond to these growing challenges for both climate action and democracy around the world? Thank you.
Thank you. I'm very happy to support you, evidently, because it's a very important one, because the climate community sometimes has been, over the years, quite insensitive to the issue and the importance of democracy. It's recent. Hopefully will continue, because I think it was a massive mistake. And you see, it's interesting because you see that for many reasons, because again, even the ecosystem of NGOs and others and companies were fixated on, if we have targets and technological fix, this will be okay. And then this can be developed and deployed in authoritarian regime or not. And of course, you are always tempted. And I think the parallel is very interesting today, where, of course, you have, the classical example, look at China, they are just accelerating, even if most of the people who say that would not go and live there. Anyway, but you can understand the contradiction. But what is interesting is to see the West Coast people, now the tech people who were so, technology fix oriented, are really rallying a very authoritarian government, and even with a big crisis of the democracy in the US. So you see that the entry point, we want quick solution, sometimes very extreme, is finally goes well hand in hand with authoritarians and a lack of democracy. So we have to defend our positioning that we need democracy to have fair transition anyway, that's just evidence. And that's the only thing that can really ensure the transformation of the society that is needed. And at the same time, I see more and more disconnect these days, and that's why it's important that the two communities, the one working, particularly in Europe, working on democracy, the freedom of association, the security for civil society, all the list of things we have to take care of, because they are under threat in many countries. And because, of course, of the playbook of the populists, in particular the US side and the Russian side, that in Europe we are under threat to defend our values. And you know, there is a disconnect, it's very evident. Governments say the citizen doesn't want climate action. You hear that, I hear that in France. You may hear that in Germany too. When in reality, all the polls from whoever institute is doing it, and including the European Commission, say 80% of all citizens in all Europe in average say we want more climate action. You don't realize how climate change is affecting us. What are you doing? And then the government decided not to listen. And listen, of course, to the ones who are full speed on deregulation these days. So that's why it's urgent to join forces, really urgent. And that's why I'm very happy we can help you, and I hope we will make the case that we have to do more and more and more and break that silo between the democracy movement and the climate movement. It's just a total impasse. It's a dead hand because the need to citizens, their voice, their agency, just to go further. And it's not a technical exercise. Of course, it's good to have participative democracy, but it's more than that. It's to understand that the fundamental values of transformation society should be based on fairness. So really, I'm happy to, of course, to develop these ideas, but I think it's very urgent because when you see intervention, which are from outside, but with, good ears from inside, taking the example in France, for example, you hear the far-right movement saying, it's foreign influence, and the NGO is not supporting our values. So that's what is important.
Thank you very much. And I take away this reference you made to technology, technocratic solutions that are certainly part of the equation, but without participation, without debate about the trade-offs or transition, obviously, it cannot be the only solution. So let me move on to Dylan. So Dylan Cava, you are a very active representative of civil society with a special perspective from the Pacific region that we know it's particularly affected in an existential way, I would say, by climate change. I would like to ask you, how do you see, in particular, the role of young people and even the representation of future generations in this debate? How do you see the state of this issue now, and what could be done more in the future?
Thank you so much, Michele. Bulvinaka, my name is Dylan. I am originally from Fiji, but I have also roots in Tonga. And, when I received an invitation to speak at this event, I had a look at the caliber of the speakers on the panel, and I thought to myself, what is the value add that I will bring to this discussion? And for me, it's exactly what you said, Michele. It's that added perspective as a young person living, not only witnessing, but experiencing the dual crisis of eroding democracy and the climate crisis. And I think it's important here to frame what we mean by intergenerational, by future generations. And the Pacific and Pacific cultures are actually built on the idea of intergenerational stewardship. We believe that we actually inherit our islands, not as owners, but actually as caretakers. And we owe something to those who will come after us. And it is because of this view that we must see democracy as a necessary tool to enable us to confront the climate crisis. So democratic governance, in my view, gives small island developing states a voice in international discussions. And critically, and I say this, it is more important that it gives us a voice in our own communities, within our own national institutions. When citizens can participate, when young people can participate, adaptation plans reflect the actual needs and communities of those on the ground. When decisions are made without young people and without the communities we live in, with the consequences, the policies actually become really disconnected. They become disconnected and disconnected from responsibility. So, on the other hand, where decision-making actually becomes more centralized or politicized, climate resilience actually suffers. Short-term economic interests, such as whether or not you want to do a coastal development, can override the long-term sustainability of where we need to be. So democracy actually ensures that the trade-offs are debated and not just passed down to communities as a top-down approach. And the two speakers that went before me talked about the potential of what democracy can bring to the climate crisis, the solutions that it can offer. But I also want to focus on what it's already doing. And we see this in climate litigation. We're seeing democracy at work through climate litigation, from youth cases in national courts, from solutions and the push from small island developing states and young people to take climate change to the International Court of Justice, framing the climate crisis as a human rights crisis. And we're seeing people turn to climate litigation because of the inaction we see young people turn to legal action as a democratic response to political inaction. Litigation affirms that climate inaction is not only a policy or political failure, but it can be a rights violation. And as a comms professional, as somebody that operates in the communication space, we also need to think about what autocratization does to how we tell the story of climate. When it comes to climate advocacy and communications, we're seeing growing green backlash, where climate policies are actually framed as something that most people are against. We're seeing it framed as a threat to jobs. We're seeing it framed as a threat to sovereignty. And to counter that, what we actually need is open and honest communication. We need journalists that can investigate freely. We need scientists who can speak without fear. And we need citizens who can actually question what they're consuming and what's coming out of media organizations, but also our politicians. And the other thing that I wanted to talk about is youth participation in and of itself, an answer to democracy, to revitalizing democracy, and also as a solution to the climate crisis. Youth movements actually remind us what democracy in action looks like. Across islands, across the globe, young people are actually organizing, they're litigating, and they're educating. Not just demanding climate action, but really intrinsically embodying what it means to live and operate in a democratic society. When governments listen, youth participation revitalizes democracy itself. But when they silence or surveil youth activism, we lose both democratic renewal and intergenerational justice. So as we see autocratization and green backlash, I think it's important to frame democracy as part of climate, as critical climate infrastructure. It's what allows communities to adapt, it's what allows courts to hold power accountable, and it's what helps citizens, especially young ones, imagine better futures. Defending democracy is quite literally part of defending the living planet. And it's only in open, participatory societies that we can build trust, that we can build courage, and that we could build the solidarity that's needed to confront this climate crisis. And I think that's where young people thrive, and I think that's where young people can add value to this, the nexus of this increasing instances of democratic backsliding and our fight against the climate crisis. Vinaka.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dylan. And talking about participation, talking about democratic institutions, last but not least, Marcela from Delibera Brazil. Your organization is very active in citizen deliberation here in Brazil, in particular, the host country. And we just, as International IDEA, just had the pleasure to publish a report together on 2 climate assemblies in the state of Pará, in particular focusing on climate finance. So in the case of Brazil, how do you see this debate and how do you see democratic participation evolving, and what could be done differently, what could be done more? Thanks.
Thank you, Michele. I represent Delibera Brazil, which is an organization, Brazilian organization, with the goal to strengthen democracy in Brazil through citizens' assemblies by sortition, and which means like it is a methodology that randomly select citizens and invite them to join a group that goes like for more or less 50 hours of learning, deliberating, and coming up with a letter of recommendations that is delivered to the public authorities for them to follow up with the implementation of these recommendations. So in the last 2 years, we have implemented some climate assemblies by sortition here in Brazil. Here in the state of Pará, we did 3 climate assemblies, and also we were part of a Latin American coalition to make a sequential climate assembly in 4 countries here in Latin America to tackle climate change. So what we've learned with these experiences is like we have a lot of course, like green backlash in the Amazon, and some governments are influence how people think in the local level. But what we see is a lot of hope and a lot of like citizens and communities and local governments wanting to participate. We not always work with the most progressive leaning governments, but we even if we are not working with this, we can see those governments is still wanting to participate and still wanting to have a voice in this climate finance ecosystem, and is still wanting to put their municipalities and their communities as an important player in these ecosystems. So the first assembly that we did here, we invited some indigenous communities, riverside communities, and like people from the forest to have a special seat in those assemblies. And we could see by those experiences and alongside the citizens, common citizens' experiences, that there's a lot to be heard from their experience, because no matter which side of the spectrum they are, they have like totally different political views and partisan views because they are randomly selected and they represent different views in society. The climate crisis, it is a consensus in the Amazon local municipalities. They can feel it. They can feel in their production, and they can feel it in their lives. So there's no narrative battle in those local communities. And this is, I feel like it is an opportunity. We have the opportunity to hear these people and to find a consensus very easily that this is a problem, and the solution is actually to go to the action and implement some of these recommendations that they are claiming for. And I think action is our key word, and we are trying to, this is the COP of the action, so we are trying to deliver and to make our effort to be very present in those communities, leading those governments to the action. But one problem that we found with the implementation of the recommendations is the lack of money to go to the action. So what we are very attentive and conscious here in the COP30 is that these funds and like climate funds need to lend to these communities and to these governments, because the lack of will is not the problem. Like there's a lot of willingness to participate and to come up with solutions, and these solutions are being localized and very connected with those communities historically have been done to protect the forest from invaders and everything that we know. So what I have to say is like, to wrap up, is we have those experiences. We've been learning with those communities and citizens' assemblies, climate assemblies by sortition. They come up with different sides of the political spectrum. They come up with different people and experiences and communities. They can join the same table as the government, as the local level responsible to tackle and to implement those actions. So we believe that is a mechanism that is very powerful to not only hear the citizens, because we like to say that our methodology, the methodology that we work with, is not a hear process, but it is an action process. It's like coming up with solutions, and like citizens are very, very competent to think about very creative and actionable solutions, and the government only wins if hears to them and implement what they need. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Marcela. And thank you for sharing these experiences that feel very close sitting here today in Belém. So before continuing with our discussion, I just want to share with you a short clip with some pre-recorded messages from some organizations that are part of the International Climate and Democracy Coalition that I mentioned in the beginning. In particular, Kevin Casas-Zamora, Secretary General of International IDEA, which acts as co-lead of the coalition in this initial stage. Yasmin Qureshi, Chair of the Board of Governors, Westminster Foundation for Democracy, and Matías Bianchi, Founder and Director of Asuntos del Sur, that is the other co-lead of the coalition.
Good afternoon, State Secretary Annen, distinguished delegates, participants, and colleagues. I'm Kevin Casas-Zamora, the Secretary General of the International Institute for Democracy and Electoral Assistance, or International IDEA. I am very pleased to address this event at the German Pavilion at COP30. Climate change is already affecting our societies and political systems, sometimes in very dramatic ways. This is why International IDEA, the only intergovernmental organization with a sole mandate to support democracy worldwide, has been working on the nexus between climate change and democratic governance since 2023. While much more must be done everywhere to address the climate crisis, I am convinced that democracies are best placed to respond thanks to core assets such as the free flow of information, transparency and accountability, and public participation. The challenges of climate change thus represent both a fundamental test for democracy and a huge opportunity to show how democracy's assets can be leveraged to deliver inclusive and also effective action. International IDEA focuses its climate and democracy work on democratic innovations for climate action, particularly strategies to enhance citizen engagement, accountability, and representation of future generations. Now, to improve coordination, awareness, and knowledge in this area, including through practical recommendations to policymakers and sector leaders, we have co-founded the International Climate and Democracy Coalition. This coalition, which I'm very proud to present today, gathers like-minded organizations from across the democracy and environmental and climate fields, and provides a platform for dialogue, research, advocacy, and joint action. I would like to take this opportunity to thank our partners and founding members of the coalition: the World Resources Institute, the Westminster Foundation for Democracy, the International Institute for Environment and Development, the Grantham Research Institute on Climate Change and the Environment, Asuntos del Sur, and Forum Asia. I also want to thank very especially Germany, a member state of International IDEA, as well as the European Climate Foundation for supporting our work on climate and democracy in general, and this timely and important coalition in particular. I wish you all the best for this event and in continuing our shared work in Belém and beyond. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Yasmin Qureshi, Member of Parliament for Bolton South and Walkden in the United Kingdom and Chair of the Westminster Foundation for Democracy. It's a privilege to join you virtually at the launch of the International Climate and Democracy Coalition. I want to commend the International IDEA and all the founding partners for this important initiative. At WFD, we believe that tackling the existential threat of climate change is the defining challenge of democracies in the 21st century, and that strong democratic institutions and citizen participation are essential to do it effectively and fairly. Climate policies cannot succeed without public trust, accountability, and inclusion, principles that lie at the core of our work across the world. From supporting the Indonesian Parliament in advancing a climate bill to highlighting how democratic practices are driving successful adaptation across Africa. The coalition's launch at COP30 marks a crucial step in uniting democratic voices to address the most urgent challenges of our time. Together, we can build more resilient, transparent, and a participatory system that empower people to shape the sustainable future they deserve, and in doing so, we will make democracy stronger. I wish you every success for this important event. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Matías Bianchi. I'm the director of Asuntos del Sur. We are thrilled to be part of this conversation. Global challenges like the climate crisis require effective shared solutions for which the Global South is uniquely positioned to contribute. At Asuntos del Sur, in our work in Latin America and other regions, for over the last 15 years have taught us that effective climate action is impossible without environmental democracy, for which fundamental freedoms, inclusive participation, and respect of human rights are essential for any policy process. As we all know, the Global South has contributed the least to the climate crisis, and yet endured its harshest impacts. Our regions should not merely supply resources for transitions decided elsewhere. True solutions need to empower local communities, indigenous people, and environmental defenders, to bring them as co-designers of policy, not those that are just consulted. These principles should guide our daily work. The Global South brings unparalleled urgency as well as a wealth of lived knowledge, innovation, and resilience into the table. Our communities are advancing decentralized energy, our ecology, and creative participatory governance, proving that robust democracies can fuel more responsive and adaptive climate policies. At Asuntos del Sur, we strive to turn these lessons into systems in which transformative participation and equity become the norm. A just climate transition must be rooted in justice, dignity, and inclusion. Progress should be measured not only by emission reductions, but also by improved life, safeguard rights, and restored ecosystems. This is our vision of democracy in action, a vision that we believe is vital for the planet's future.
Thank you. Thank you very much to all the organizations that are part of the coalition and that very engaged in this debate. Madame Toubiana, let me get back to you about the International Climate and Democracy Coalition in particular. What is the potential of an initiative like that, in your opinion, and what should we focus on as a priority?
Sorry, first I commend like everyone in these panels that it's a moment, and I really, I'm very happy this is taking shape. So just full support. I think this coalition has this really, having this come together, we have now to go for, as was mentioned, some actions that are particularly important. One, in my view, is, and I would mention two ones, and thank you for all what I heard. That's really encouraging, and we can build on all what you do, no? That's just already there. And I think one is really to develop the citizen track to make sure that this voice of citizen, the agency, is respected. Again, as we know, the backlash is I call now not even disinformation. I call this propaganda. It's a way to push people out of the scene and to make choices that will impact on them without any way to get them. And I was very struck by your ideas on adaptation. I have bad example, for example, in Nigeria, when they decided to protect a particular district, and of course, because of course of rising waters, they finally organized a whole catastrophe just 1 kilometer after, no? Because of course, you can't just solve one problem and without understanding the consequence. So I think, and for responsibility, all what you said, I totally agree. So this, how we, from this COP, which is still not there, but we should have a track for citizens to prepare the next COP. We have the global assemblies. There was a lot of events around that. I don't know how to, but we have to prepare for, as a demand, that there is a citizen track. And there is a proposal to have citizen NDCs, or could be citizen adoption plans, that government should not go alone, as we know for local actors, but the citizen voice is, I think, something we could make super concrete, because there is already the elements, and you are preparing that, doing your own job. So if we could gather that. The second one, of course, is the problem of disinformation. And that could be, it's very difficult to fight against that. You see that when you intervene after the propaganda is set, it's very difficult to correct. So we should have collectively, so they have a playbook. We should have a playbook ourselves too. Huh? They have the same message, with, of course, very quickly diffused, and that is operating in many regions on the same time. So I think, so citizen assemblies and voices, and because the peer-to-peer relation prevent the fake news to be so convincing, because then people just are not captured by this flow of information. So that's why it's so important to have the people in the room talking together and confronting their views. And the second one is probably really to find the ways to gather efforts of the source of this disinformation, equip ourselves better. And I saw when we anticipate, you know, fake news comes with an intention in particular moment, whether it is national politics or global politics. Can we share more foresight of what the mounting action will happen on their side to prevent that before? If we come before, we have a chance. If we come after, in reality, not. So we could share this information, work our playbook ourselves, and then understand the key moments where we have to prevent their action. So that's my two ideas, but anyway, very enthusiastic about what you do. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your support. And Natasha, back to you. Building on what Madame Toubiana was saying, how do you think that this coalition can help connecting different actors, both global and local, governmental, so legislative powers, and non-governmental organizations?
Yeah, thank you very much. And let me first say that it's really great to see the momentum that has been achieved by the International Climate and Democracy Coalition at this point, and we are very happy to be part of it and support the coalition. As you have said, we really believe that it will bring together governments, civil society and research institutions to explore the links between democratic governance and climate action in a unique community of practice, so to speak. So the coalition will be able to facilitate peer exchange and joint research on democratic resilience in climate transitions, and also to increase knowledge about the interlinked crisis. So we hope that the coalition can also raise awareness in a very coordinated manner and provide practical recommendations to policymakers, sector leaders for tackling those dual crises. Let me also stress how unique this coalition is, because for the first time it's bringing together two historically separated communities on climate action and democracy promotion. And we believe the success of this is of utmost importance in this day and age. So when different perspectives meet in a constructive setting, this can lead to important new thinking, synergies, and to much needed innovation. So I do hope that partners and institutions from around the globe will join this coalition to ensure that green transition is also a democratic transition, because democracy and climate action, they share the same common logic. They depend on trust. What we see a lot here in the negotiations and beyond, trust is essential, participation and also collective responsibility for the future. Since as we confront the climate crisis, we must also defend and renew our democratic principles that make collective action on all levels possible. And so I do hope that COP30 here in Belém is not only a turning point for climate ambition, this I do hope a lot, but also for democratic renewal. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Natasha. And definitely we will try to play our part in that. So,
sorry, because I have to go to negotiation now. That's my job. And very happy and all support. Go on. We have wonderful things to do, and this is the right moment. Thank you.
Very much. Thank you very much for joining us, Laurence. So as Natasha was saying, the coalition aims to reach out progressively to an ever greater number of organizations. Now we have a steering committee formed by 6 organizations, and you can find more information about the coalition on the newly launched website icdc.org. So we do have a few minutes now for some questions and from the audience. So if you have a question, please introduce yourself and let us know who you are addressing your question to.
Hi. First of all, thanks a lot for this event. I'm Jean Sauvignon. I'm working at Cota Climat, a French NGO working on information integrity and climate change, which I think sit right in the middle of democracy and fight against climate change. Quick question. The United Nations, UNESCO, Brazil launched the Global Initiative for Information Integrity and Climate Change at the G20 last year. And this week, well, last week and this week, there is a strong momentum on that matter because other countries are joining that global initiative and signing a declaration about information integrity. Germany joined the global initiative as well and signed the declaration. Could the coalition call for countries to join more that declaration and that global initiative? Because at the end of the day, this is the job of the NGOs also to call for action their government. So could that be a way to give more momentum to that action this week?
Maybe we can take another question if there is any. Yeah.
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you, yes, for this panel and important discussion. I agree on that. So my name is Julian. I'm working for an international organization called People in Need from Czech Republic. We work in 40 countries. We are also a member of the European Partnership for Democracy. So we mix work on climate and democracy. What we see, like we work in different countries. We have seen in Georgia, like some backlash or so on the work we have been doing. But we are also concerned with what is happening in countries which are not necessarily like, they are not autocratic. Like for example, in France recently, like there is some problem. I'm also French, by the way. So we have seen like some videos of how the police have been attacking environmental activists. So I'm sorry that Mrs. Tubiana left because that was an interesting question for her to have her feedback on that. But in Czech Republic also for recent elections, we see that we are also local NGOs in Czech Republic and we have been removed from all assemblies or spaces where we could promote the work on climate change. So what else can be done also at European level to, we are not working in an autocratic regime necessarily, that's not how we mention that, but the space also is shrinking definitely. Thank you.
Well, so I can just comment from the International Climate and Democracy Coalition, and I couldn't agree more on the fact that integrity of information and the participation of civil society are key pillars of this debate and the answer to climate crisis and democracy decline. And we can also think about what happened in the last few days here at COP. The observation I would make, totally personal, is that at least in a country like Brazil, we can discuss about that. And we can argue whether the access was enough or not enough, whether the response is correct or not correct. And that's the starting point. And in this line, in other countries this is not possible. So that's the nature of having a democratic debate. And as international idea and members of the coalition, obviously, we encourage improvement in that sense. Any other question? Please introduce yourself and tell us if you address the question to a specific speaker.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Gabriel Sanchez Ainza. I'm a PhD student at Northwestern University. I'm originally from Spain, where we're seeing a lot of democratic backsliding, like people shifting to the far right, and at the same time, climate skepticism. So I worry a lot about this. So it's very moving to see that there are people connecting the two, which is a lot of what my research is about too. So thank you so much for this panel. I find it very hopeful. My question has to do with the citizen assemblies that Delibera Brazil and ICD seems to be interested in. So one criticism that you see of citizen assemblies is that they are the motivation for them is that they're supposed to model excellent deliberation among citizens, reaching consensus to inform public policy. But a lot of people also criticize citizen assemblies when they have decision-making power as a kind of democratic shortcut, because they skip over the kind of hard work of grassroots mobilization that you see of not only litigation efforts, which are very grassroots effort and led, but also communications, door knocking, talking to people on our day-to-day that are outside those citizen assemblies. So the kind of criticism is that if you get a lot of people across the spectrum, you might be able to get them to an irrational consensus, but you're not necessarily incrementing participation across civil society. So I was just wondering what you would have to say against those kind of criticisms that are coming against citizen assemblies as non-democratic shortcuts.
Thank you. I guess your question is for Marcela.
Thank you for your question. I think it's something that Delibera Brazil tried to do is do a dual sample. Of course, we have the sample of the citizens who are randomly selected to participate, but rely only on those sample, it would be impossible, because we are talking about the Amazon in Brazilian context that is full of social movement, social activism, and work towards climate change. Without those activists and civil society representatives, it would be impossible. So when we come to a place, and this happened when we came to the Amazon municipalities, the first moment that we enter into a new municipality, we come to the grassroots movements and we talk to the civil society organizations and invite them to be part of our content group, we call, it's kind of like a council for the assembly, and they have a chance not even to deliberate how the assembly gonna take place, but also to appoint people that they want to speak and to present their point of view in the assemblies. So it is a dual group that deliberates together, because we are very, very conscious and not naive that we could do something without the civil society when we are talking about the Brazilian context that is very, very fruitful of those grassroots movements. So also this experience, the last experience that we had in Barcarena, it was very, the civil society organization, the main one that it is a kind of a hub of a small civil society, small traditional communities organizations. They were very crucial to the recruitment, because we are from outside of the Amazon. When we come to a new municipality, people need someone that they trust a new process, a process that comes with foreign money, for example, and people who are not from their city. So we need those civil society organizations who are already a hub and working in the territory to provide some legitimacy to the process. And this civil society organization that we work with, they were very crucial to the recruitment and to giving legitimacy to the process. So, yeah.
Thank you. I did want to jump in here and talk a little bit about climate assemblies as well. You know, quite often when we talk about climate assemblies, it's with the intention to implement in the Global South. But actually, I'd be really interested to see a lot of these global assemblies instituted in the Global North, because, you know, when we talk about the struggle with getting things done in the climate space, we often talk about, you know, the lack of political will. And actually, I feel if you do a lot of climate, if you turn your attention to doing climate assemblies, not only focusing on the Global South, but in the Global North, you might be surprised at how it may lend legitimacy to actually get the government to what they need to do. There's a lot of assumption that you know, the Global North are worried about jobs, they're worried about this, they're worried about that. But actually, if you do the groundwork and actually get everyday people in, I mean, that's what the sortation aspect of climate assemblies allows and enables, then you may get a different sense of what your country, as a Global North country, might want to do, you know? And it would, in my view, could add to the legitimacy of actually doing, governments doing what's needed to be done, because a lot of that hesitation is because, as politicians, you know, they're concerned about election cycles. They're concerned about how they would be perceived by the electorate. And so really thinking about how climate assemblies in the Global North could lend legitimacy to do the hard yards to what needs to happen to governments. And I think that needs to be, yeah.
Absolutely, very interesting point. And we have experiences of climate assemblies in the Global North, and those have been not, you know, without issues. And not all the recommendations that came out from climate assemblies have been taken up by governments or parliaments, and also the mechanism which connects global climate assemblies to institutions needs to be improved. But what you said is it's crucial, because going back to what Laurence Toubiana was saying about deconstructing the narrative that people are not interested. So these are tools that we can use to show how an informed public opinion responds to these topics. So perhaps we have time for one last question, if anyone has a question? No? If not, so I was very pleased to be here at this discussion today. I really thank all of you, in particular the German Pavilion, to hosting us, and our speakers that were so generous to spend time with us today. And I hope that this will be only the first opportunity to discuss about the nexus between climate and democracy in a long series of occasions, and in particular through the International Climate and Democracy Coalition. So watch this space, and thank you very much for your support, and have a good afternoon.
Global Multidão, realizing just transitions. Welcome to the German Climate Pavilion at COP30 in Billy.